Please regard whoever is bypassing a meter, whoever is picking an angle bar is as good as picking money from your account, because you are going to pay for that safety. So we would like to partner with you, the public, especially you now, the captains of the various industries, private, government, to be able to sensitize those who are looking for safe rears and beds, who are destroying infrastructure worth millions of dollars to earn 20,000 shillings of a saucepan. Please, we need to sensitize them so that we help them to engage into productive activities that don't take us backward. Of course, I've already shared that we need to invest in the distribution and transmission network to be able to create a robust network that is required to support industrialization, provide a reliable and quality supply. And of course, the last one is job creation. When this electricity, when the price is low, the industries will come, production will increase, they will start setting up even expansion, there is room for expansion, they will create jobs, and once these jobs are created, our Bazukuls are off the street. They are not only off the street, but we are able then to talk about social economic transformation. Thank you very much.
I missed the opportunity to walk her down because she remembered that sometimes she goes up to the electricity poles and you doubt her capability. It was a good honor. Thank you very much. And the presentation so far are very interesting convergences. The figures paint a fairly ambitious picture. But if the Cranes is on its way to AFCON 2019, and the Ugandan just won an award yesterday, then actually you know Uganda is on the right track. But Henry tells the story better. Maybe you have something to tell us as we prepare to proceed to the next 4 slides. Everybody's wondering whether you're in the house. Just come and say hello, Henry. You know power better.
Good morning. You know, one of the biggest challenges of this summit is people don't smile enough. And I was listening to Zelia and I was listening to Jocelyn speaking. And I thought, wow, Uganda's got women with incredible talent. You know, I had an opportunity of working closely with Zelia. She's one tough lady. The idea that she goes up a pole is not a joke. I've also had an opportunity of working with Jocelyn. And she too is a very tough lady. But with that toughness comes incredible talent. I think that listening, Professor is not here now, but listening to Professor, listening to Mark, it was a very proud moment. Years ago, you'd come to these summits, every MD was a British MD. Today, every MD is a Ugandan, is an East African MD, and that is what this summit is all about, building that local talent. And later on, it gets better. There are rumors that Richard Byarugaba might speak. So we're going to see a whole array of talent, and we need to enjoy that, and we need to celebrate that. And I think I want to use the opportunity to congratulate the summit business, because bringing us here together just continuously reminds us that we have to build this talent, we have to work towards it. But it comes at a price. I think that if you read some wonderful books, Malcolm Gladwell has a book, The Outliers. If you haven't read it, I'll ask that you take time to read it. Because when you read it, you realize you've got to spend 10,000 hours to build that talent. The kind of 10,000 hours Mutabazi and his group at UCC have done to transform technology. So I'd like to end with that because Engineer Mutabazi is here. You need to tweet, you need to use the technology that UCC has enabled and enjoy this summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Henry. That was quite spot on. I'd like to begin with you and request we agree that we share what's supposed to be the health break in some informal walk-ins and outs. The food stations will remain open, but since we have to end at lunchtime, I request that we do agree that feel free to take your leisure walk anytime to freshen yourself, and the stations remain open. We'll have a working team. Are we together, ladies and gentlemen? Is that agreed? Agreed, eh? Thank you very much indeed. I've did it, eh? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me, Richard Byarugaba. We've talked about manufacturing, agriculture, and you can't run away, they want the money. This cluster on finance has extensively surveyed the landscape, picked out several issues, and I hope they fit in and gel with the issues raised so far from the core sectors to bring the aspirations to fruition. Richard Byarugaba has overseen the fund's transformation and turnaround over the 7 years to an asset size of over $2.5 billion. Of course, this is born out of the experience over 3 decades in managing financial institutions of international repute. He sits on the board of the National Social Security Fund, Uganda Securities Exchange, and is the chairman of the East and Central Social Security Association. He has a very rich experience in banking through all the banks that you have had around. He is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. He holds a master's degree in business administration from Edinburgh Business School, a management diploma from Henley Management College, UK, and a bachelor's of science degree in statistics and economics from Makerere University. I don't know which schools he went to in Uganda. He has only given me the international schools. But I confirm that he went to school, studied in Uganda. Richard, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much. The financial sector is not as well organized as energy. So listening to, at least you had a focus. There's so many players in the finance, and our sector obviously is totally dominated by the private sector, largely private sector. I know there's 1 or 2 government banks. So, putting together their views and looking at what we need to do as a financial sector in order to answer some of the questions that were put out to the sectors was a little bit of a challenge. So hopefully we've been able to serve the purpose of ensuring that the financial sector does fit quite well in Uganda. I recall that most of the presentations that were made earlier today, everything ended up in finance. How do we get money into our sectors? How do we get money to bring the cost of electricity down? How do we get money to improve the talent that's available? So you will find that everything revolves around the financial sector. I would like to draw your attention, those of you who might have this book. It's, I think, on your table. So if you could just go to page 42, just so that I have all of you on board. You'll notice that in there, just at the very top right-hand corner, well, almost corner, the financial sector has been summarized. And the data is a little bit old, because it talks of 2016. Those numbers haven't changed that much because I think the financial sector, the banking industry actually did shrink slightly to about 21 trillion last year. So as you can see in there, the financial sector hasn't been growing that much. Access to financial services is still very low at 22%. Access to informal and formal is only at 36%. Insurance, very, very, very undeveloped. I see the regulator here, so I have to be sure what I say. Only 1.2 formally insured, 40% informally insured. That means having cattle and things like that as insurance. And 57% of us don't get insured at all. If you look at the private sector credit, that's been shrinking. So not a good story to tell. I think the only nice story that you can perhaps say is the 78%, where people are a little bit financially included. But look at the risks and the concerns that are actually present in our industry. So the first one is cyberspace, and that does point to something, which hopefully I will explore a little bit further. Privacy concerns, we all know about this. This is the new devil that you need to be aware of as soon as you have data out there. Mobile money has become a significant part of the financial services. Fraud, therefore, becomes a big part of that. And I'm sure you've heard about the story or the stories about theft of mobile money. And then, of course, R&D, which is basically coming up with new ideas. So, our team within the financial sector included the following: the Deputy PSST, Mr. Ochailap. We had Stephen Kaboyo of the Alpha Capital. We had Paul. We had the Bankers Association. We had a lawyer on there. I don't know what he was doing there. Anyway, he was there. Don't like lawyers that much, except if they're on my side. We had Sarah from the EPRC. We had Albert from Standard Chartered. We had Joseph from the insurance. We had Fabian from Centenary. Keith, Robin, and myself. My presentation is going to look at 5 areas. First of all, what is the use of the forum? I believe that we need to find a use for it after having formed it. Secondly, I will talk about what I believe is trending, and you'll be surprised that although we're talking about finance, the financial sector, the issue we should be talking about is something called data, because that's what the whole world, that's what's driving the whole world. We then share with you some cases. Fortunately enough, they are not in our market, so there wasn't any issue of sharing data that some of the players are. We also undertook a survey of the members to basically talk about some of the challenges that were raised as part of, and then we'll agree a couple of action points going forward. Actually, questions which perhaps might be interesting. And then I'd like to make an announcement as take the opportunity, since we have a big crowd, largely from the NSSF side. So how useful will this forum be? Perhaps let's look at what I think we should do. First of all, it's not about finance. The big deal is data. The big deal is FinTech. The big companies that run the world today are not companies that are usual. And I like to, every time I'm presented with an opportunity to talk to people, I tell people that it's no longer about financial services, it's no longer about retail, it's no longer about all the things that traditionally we knew. The big companies today own the data. So the data, as they say, is the new oil. Hopefully, we'll also leverage a little bit of learning from this experience. And then I'm hoping that we can come up with some things which we can, I know the minister is gone, but hopefully somebody is taking the notes on some of the things we believe should be done with respect to policy that currently runs this country. So what's happening in the data space? Number one, there's been a lot of embracing of fintechs. I'm sure anybody who is anywhere near financial services knows that if you do not have an app, your business will not be delivered. If you don't use robo-advisors, your banking will not have any ability to capture market share. When I was the CEO at one of the banks in town, we used to have a monthly meeting with the central bank governor, I'm sure they still do, under the auspices of the Uganda Bankers Association. And I recall speaking to one of the CEOs at the very beginning of the talk that was to now become the norm of mobile banking. And I recall speaking to this CEO and telling him that, you know what, I think we're going to be out of jobs. Oh, sorry, banks are going to be out of jobs because mobile banking will take over the payment system. And this CEO, who shall remain unnamed, not Ugandan, fortunately, very smart guy, I thought at the time, turned to me and said, YMBJ. If you write those initials, it just means you must be joking. And I said, why? He said, well, banking is a traditional business. There's no way anybody could come and take over our business. Well, how wrong was he? There's been a lot of unbundling and rebuilding of the fintech especially. And as you all know now, there is a company called N26, which has been granted a full banking license and is nowhere near a bank. If you look at the global trend, the fintechs are increasingly becoming aggressive, and they've been able to cross borders, so able to provide you with financial services regardless of where you are. When I was working in the UK, I opened a bank account, and I didn't have to go to the bank, to the branch. I still have that bank account today. I do all my transactions there, and have never been to a branch of that bank anywhere in the world. It shows you the power of how you can do all your financial services regardless of where you are within the world. And that's because of the power of the internet, or as it was said earlier, the opportunity that UCC has given to us. Blockchain, there's been so much talked about it. I know that governments are scared about it, but as usual, governments will always play catch-up time. We believe that voting will perhaps be most secure on blockchain. Health records, definitely very secure there, and taxation. But for me, the big thing for our country, I think, would be the land registry. I wish the land registry would be put on blockchain so that nobody ever tampers with it. So at least if they do tamper with it, we are able to know who's been able to tamper with it, because that's what blockchain gives you. A secure way of undertaking transactions and making sure that they are available. The second Payment Services Directive, those of you who are not aware, was issued by the European Union. So what was decided in Rome will not stay in Rome, because what that means is that the banks who had a monopoly on customer data will no longer be able to do that, and they will have to share their data. My favorite piece is the story of Alibaba and the story of Amazon, which, as you know, is now the largest company in the world. These two monsters, and I was just recently reading about the story of of Amazon, how he actually started the company, basically selling books, and today he sells everything. But these retailers, as I said, no longer use the products that they are selling out as a competitive advantage. The reason they have so much power is because they have so much data. And that data, they are now channeling into financial services. These two tech companies will be able to provide financial services to their users who are already on the system. And that means that they can also give loans, the traditional preserve of the banks, which means that the banking business as we know it will probably disseminate. Insurance hasn't been spared itself because at the moment technology is helping to lower the risk available, and the use of artificial intelligence is bringing down the risks that the insurance people can take on. Of course, regulation, the use of technology in regulation and compliance within financial services. If I were a regulator, the area that I would like to build is making sure that I have so much data to see when things are going wrong and being able to predict using things like artificial intelligence and machine learning what the players within the industry will do. Regulation, of course, I've already touched on that. And then finally, if somebody pushes a button, is financial inclusion, which, as you know, banking and the mobile phone has been able to do. I think that in the future, that handset, whatever its form ends up, will be the main channel of doing anything financial that we've ever thought about. So your credit card, your insurance policy, paying tickets, buying things, ordering things, and doing everything else, you know, doing your dinner and lunch and whatever else you want to do in your life. I think you'll be able to do that using your mobile phone. So a very good tool, which I believe will empower the citizens of the world to do whatever they need to do. So having talked about the trends that are trending in the world, we thought that we'd share with you just two business cases, one within the financial services and another one within the Credit Reference Bureau. Who would have thought Credit Reference Bureau would become? So let's just roll it over. So this company, obviously we've not used the real name for wanting to protect it, is a financial services within the US. It's got over 100 million customers. I don't know what the number is for Uganda, but I think it's around 5 or 6 million. So you can see the scale. And the challenge at the time was how could they optimize the customer service and also improve on their risk management. So their strategy was investing in a big data infrastructure and use a little bit of machine learning technology in order to support the decisions that they make whilst making things like credit and also providing things like letters of credit and all the things that banks do in order to provide the service. The results has been quite incredible. They've had savings in potential fraud. Just roll, yeah. They've been able to detect internal fraud and where they were not able to do that. And this has come because they're able to process large volumes of data from a large area of sources and putting all that within a platform and then giving the people who make the decisions all the information in one place without necessarily having to look for it in some place. And as you can see, they've been able to really reduce their fraud almost by $2 billion. So quite a big achievement. That's just the presentation on the decisions on how they're made. As I said, the second example, again, we're not using the real name. It's a Credit Reference Bureau. For those of you who are not particularly aware of what a Credit Reference Bureau does, is they take data on default of all citizens. The data in Uganda isn't that great yet, I know that the credit reference bureaus we have in this country only take data from the banks, but they need to take data from, if you're paying your telephone bill, if you're paying your water bill, if you are paying your parking ticket. So basically, using all that data to predict how good you are with paying your debts. Anyway, in this particular case, they were serving over 40,000 corporate customers. Obviously, they sell their data to the corporates so that the corporates can make the decisions in whether to allocate credit to people or not. And the challenge was that they needed to improve the capabilities of insight discovery for better decision making for their customers. So these companies were struggling in how to get the data in order to make the decisions on what sort of credit they should be giving, or what sort of business they should be undertaking, and how much risk they should be allowing within their businesses. So what did they do? They invested in a self-service tool that offers market insights directly to customers. In other words, as a customer of theirs, you are able to input stuff on your desk and be able to basically play around with scenarios and then make those decisions on the customers at which you're making. The results is that it allowed the banks to make sure that their delinquency rates, in other words, their bad debt rates, came down significantly, and they were also able to accurately detect those people who are not good with their credits in the future. And as a result of that, the market for financial services has become too big and diverse to be served by the traditional means, and that's why we need to leverage on self-service tools, one of the ways of optimizing big data. So guys, this stuff is already available. We are already using a lot of this stuff in my company at the NSSF, and I believe a lot of the financial services that are on this particular forum are already using this in one way or another. So that technology of machine learning, use of data, is already available with us. Artificial intelligence, I was looking the other day, I don't know if any of you saw it, there was a little clip that was trending on the social media, and it was talking about the jobs that are going to disappear in the next 10, 20 years. Guess what job is going to disappear, and what, actually, let me read from it for those of you who might not have seen it, if I can find it. Should have been more organized. Let's see. If somebody's got it, please forward it to me while I look for it. I know my team, actually I know where to find it. Patrick, you should be helping, huh? Visit my bank branch, somebody says. No, I don't need it. Yep. All right, there we are. The job landscape in 2022. Has any of you seen that? I think it's a great one. So, they give the 10 declining jobs. So, if you allow me, I'll read them. Data clerk, that will go. Accounting, I know all of us have professional accounting qualifications. That will go. And bookkeeping and that sort of thing. Payroll. Administrative and executive assistants. You remember that secretary of yours? Assembly and factory workers, all right? I know somebody was talking about that. Client information and customer service workers. Business services and admin managers. Accountants and auditors, that really is interesting, because I'm one. Material recording and stock keeping clerks. General and operation managers and postal services. We knew that anyway, but they just confirmed it. So what are the emerging ones? Number one, data analytics and scientists. So if you have a kid who is out there, that's the area they need to go into. We've been hiring, by the way, at the fund, so if you know some good ones, send them our way. Artificial intelligence and machine learning specialists, number two. Number three, general and operations managers. That surprised me, but I think it's specialized. Number four, software and app developers and analysts. Sales and marketing, because you've got to sell the stuff. in any case. Big data specialists, number 6. Digital transformation specialists, new technology specialists, organizational development specialists, and IT services. As you can see, Mr. Mutabazi and the company are all in business, and the rest of us have to sort of follow suit. But that's really the new world for us. And financial services hasn't been spared itself. So after having gone through this, we did a poll on our members to basically find out what they think about all the things that I've been talking about, but specifically what they think about the situation. So number 1 is poverty in Uganda persisting because of poor execution of government policies. What did our members think? They thought that 66, which is a significant number, neither agreed nor disagreed. So, you take your pick. So they were sitting on the fence. I don't know whether they didn't want to be critical of government, but let's go on. Does Uganda have enough investment opportunities? Does Uganda not have enough? A lot of them disagreed with this, which basically means there is so much to be done here. Number 3, the recent move to increase taxes, and you know which ones, OTT, if you haven't been in Uganda for a while, 66% of them disagreed with this statement. They don't believe it's a positive thing. So Mr. Mutaba, policymakers, and Doris and her team, you need to be aware. Am I satisfied with the regulatory environment for financial services? Bank of Uganda disagreed with this statement. So they are not satisfied with that. In fact, for me, that is a big, big deal. So all the regulators in town need to know that people are not happy. Is Uganda ready to embrace that? That surprised me. They disagree with this statement. In other words, Uganda isn't ready to embrace cryptocurrencies, but I think it should be. Number 6, I have sufficiently prepared my business to blank out. I have sufficiently prepared my business to make the most of big data, and a lot of people agreed with this. So as I said, this is already here. Very important. You'll notice that number 6 and number 4, I starred them because they're big. It's a big message for us. FinTech holds the keys to improving financial inclusion in Uganda. I think I think all of you will agree with that. Number 9, are we investing a lot, but are we seeing the returns on the economy? 66 agree with that. Number 9, I am very open-minded about FinTech and the opportunities it presents for my business. Again, people agreed with that. Finally, and that's the killer, 100% agreed that the recent tax on mobile phone is not good. So, having gone through this, what's the way forward for us, we believe. So, as I said, there will be more questions than answers. EPRC was on our team. Uganda Bankers Association were represented on our team. Can we come up with a sort of data center, a knowledge center, where we can develop our people, our players, to be able to use FinTech and data, big data. Number 2, is government and the policymakers willing to develop a big data capability so that the economy and the tax policy can encourage us to go this direction? Because we will not avoid it. Number 3, how do we promote innovation? Can we commit to putting some funding aside and introduce innovation, especially in that space of FinTech, and also using financial data and all the stuff that's in there in order to promote financial inclusion? And tax, can we have a frank discussion with government so that next time they don't really come up with things that really stop us rather than encourage us from really involving everybody? So if you look at number 3, we at the NSSF have taken that bull by its horns, so to speak. And there's a little statement they wrote for me. I need to read it so that I don't. On the 15th of November, at the NSSF, we shall be launching a pilot innovation program targeting seed funding of up to US dollars 300,000 for ideas which have a potential to scale. We encourage everyone who has an idea that is in its initiative stage to support us in this initiative and bring your ideas in. They should obviously have a little bit of technical ability, but also support the financial side of the business, and that idea will be funded to the tune of $20,000. So we'll give $20,000 to the company in order for them to upscale, and we'll be able to find funding for them up to the tune of $300,000. So thank you so much. And that's it. Sorry.
The proposal of a standing ovation is a preserve of the chair, conference chair. But for now, we'll give you an applause, Richard. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. And you made a very good disclaimer that there will be more questions than answers. But to get it home, we will get a presentation on communication. Yeah, you get your coffee. I beg your indulgence, we were supposed to have tourism, but because of the reference to ICT, and especially the survey done towards the end of the presentation, we felt we should put Mr. Mtabazi in the dock and also tell us his findings. He has a very brief introduction because we had his profile until yesterday when an email started doing the rounds about a possible cabinet appointment. So we didn't want to talk about things that probably might be history, but Mr. Mtabazi is the CEO of the Uganda Communications Commission, and is here in his own right to give us the findings on ICT. Let's welcome Mr. Godfrey Mtabazi. Welcome, Godfrey.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And my board chair is here, and looks like she was worried I was leaving. I was becoming a minister, and it's a minister who appoints the chair, so it was going to be trouble at UCC. Thanks so much, and thank you also, Asima, for allowing me to come before you. And also, I would like to thank the two presenters who have been here. First of all, from Electricity Regulatory Authority. Believe it or not, even in Kamwengu we have electricity. I really thank you so much. It's a dream come true. But also, Richard, I was telling my board chair the other day and the board members that in 5 years' time, there will be a law demanding that you must have a robot as a part of the board wired to the data center so that everything you say is verified right there. It is coming very soon. So that's how we are. And again, I also mentioned something when we were celebrating EC at 20 for you, and again to Richard, because I know Richard very well. I don't want to call you a bad guy, but you don't read this book. This is where they say, I'll create a new earth and a new heaven. You remember that statement? So that's what I'm going to talk about, the data, where the new world is being created. Thank you so much. Now, technology advancement has had a profound impact on the economies, business, and societies today. It has transformed the way industries operate, create new opportunities, and extended boundaries. It has further transformed societies, including the way they interact. The adoption of mobile technology has increased the level of connectivity and communication. while at the same time increasing the pace of digitization. Through leveraging on the mobile technology, various sectors have transformed the way they are operating. Access to communication has grown exponentially over the last decade. Today, GSM reports that there are over 5.1 billion mobile subscribers in the entire world, having grown by 3.1% over the last year. And the prediction, ladies and gentlemen, now that we are going into a new era of the fourth industrial revolution, where we are going to introduce what is popularly known as 5G, we expect to have 1 trillion devices in the next 5 years. The speeds that are coming now in the next 3 to 5 years are unbelievable. GSM further reports that there are 8.4 billion connected things as of 2017 and are projected to over 20 million by 2020. This increase in connectivity is expected to disrupt manufacturing, automotive, and aviation industry, among others. Today, various sectors are harnessing the power of connectivity to transform and extend boundaries of service delivery. For example, financial services have evolved to include mobile money and mobile services. Health services have grown to include telemedicine, which e-learning has been introduced in the education sector. The opportunities for trade afforded by e-commerce are immense. The digital revolution continues to present more opportunities, that is, smart cities, e-health, digital entrepreneurship, digital skills, e-waste management, and agriculture, among others. The rapid change in technology, which I witnessed today, has been described by Professor Klaus, chairman of the World Economic Forum, as early as stages of fourth industrial revolution. According to this revolution is transforming the way human, physical, digital, and biological components of society interact with emerging and digital technologies. This disruption is being witnessed in fields such as artificial intelligence, robots, the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotechnology. And I'm sure you've heard a joke about nanotechnology, that last time I was addressing the group of lawyers, I said that it is possible that this technology may be designed and form into minute robots that will be inserted into your bloodstream to correct all your DNA malfunctions, with the possibility that you live forever. That may correct all the abnormalities in our bodies and our bloodstreams, and will become forever eternal. And secondly, it's true, this is coming in the next few years. Maybe it's been predicted in the next 20 years, that we shall be able to download our consciousness and send it to any parts of the universe, and you leave your bodies behind. The caretakers now will be good enough, strong enough, and modern enough to keep your body, that when you don't want to come back, you just press a button and you destroy it. These are things which are coming. So we are likely to live forever on this planet or elsewhere in the planets. This is a fact, I've seen it. So there is material science, energy storage, and quantum computing, among others. All those things are coming. The emerging technologies are presenting new opportunities in the way we do things. For example, the emergence of 3D printing has enabled industries to explore new manufacturing models, including distributed manufacturing. The manufacturing and automobile industry is also expected to reap increased efficiencies on account of artificial intelligence and robots. We're already witnessing trials for driverless cars and robot assembly, packaging, and logistic lines in developed countries. The next generation of communication and entertainment is also being transformed by virtual reality. Of course, we saw some examples when MTN was launching its 20-year celebration. Those things are already here with us. Virtual reality promises to reduce, if not eliminate, the need for physical travel as such. The tourism and hospitality industry thus needs to embrace these development. On the other hand, it further creates immense opportunities for the entertainment industry as well as the education industry. Incidentally, colleagues, entertainment industry is one of the industries that has been mentioned to drive the world in the next few years. It's one of the innovations that is coming. All these ladies and girls and young boys from Natet and whatever, it's the next industry now. In Nigeria, production industry is second to oil, I think, if not number one to oil. It's so huge that that is the next industry we are seeing coming here. So this provides a great opportunity for digital content developers. Similarly, blockchain, which my brother has just mentioned, and other distributed ledger technologies are aiding transparency by creating and securing an immutable record to verify financial service transactions, while supporting alternative digital currencies such as Bitcoin. It's true, and I agree with my friend, that ignoring blockchain or digital currency is a waste of time. It must come and it will take over. It's a fact. These things are coming here. If we don't embrace it now, we shall perish. It has also supported development of registries across the legislature, judiciary, healthcare, as well as land and business registration. This is critical for e-government services. Actually, when it comes to judiciary, there is a research at the California, I think, Institute of Technology, and also one of the universities in UK, where they are finalizing reference dictionary for the mind, so that when you go to court, for example, all they have to do is just put a probe on your head and ask questions you don't have to answer. They will just see what your mind is saying, so they would establish the truth or not. That one is also coming. It's already being tested in America and the UK. Relatively, sensors, robotics, and artificial intelligence is enabling better understanding of environment and further providing opportunity to harness the environment. The Internet of Things is also enabling greater tracking of physical products, logistics systems, and energy grids. It further allows access to and exchange of information remotely via the cloud. Despite all the opportunities listed above, we risk missing the opportunities afforded if we do not address the existing challenges, bottlenecks to technology adoption. The current policy development, business process, and mechanism in Uganda are traditional and linear, yet the technology space is highly competitive. Actually, the Minister of ICT has just released a broadband policy where we intend to cover, in the next 3 to 5 years, each and every parish must have a network with the speeds. They were talking about 8 Mbps, but I think that is so ambitious, but I think the 4 will be good enough for each and every parish, after all, considering the economies of it. So that one we shall attain within 3 years. Of course, the new license regime that has come in is bringing back the national operators, for example, MTN, Airtel, and our famous communication company known as UTL. I think all of you have heard of that company. So those are national operators. We believe those will be able to cover our nation so that everybody will be having good broadband. And I've always argued, my chair is aware, that there's no such a thing as a particular broadband. You cannot say broadband, 3 Mbps, whatever. Broadband is personal, not so? If I'm busy at downloading content that is heavy, then my broadband may be even 20, 30 Mbps. So we are saying that society is changing from communal to individual consumption now. That everybody now, since it's moving from visual, audio to digital, we are going to face a lot of big challenges so that to make our networks very efficient. And that's why maybe in a shortest possible time, we should launch the 5G. Though, of course, you know, the challenge is the 5G, we don't have devices. We have to get them. I know one country in I think Botswana, the banks have got 5G. I know, you know, for connectivity and all that. But when you go a few miles from the headquarters, they have got these computers. You remember that used to have the peacock kind of design. You know those old computers with behind backs and a small screen. So, and the question was, why don't you modernize the computers for schools and other services before you go into 5G? But that is where we are now in Africa. The current policy development, business processes, and mechanism in Uganda are traditional and linear. I'm repeating this one. Yet the technology space is highly competitive and dynamic. Technology companies require quick and flexible business registration, procedures, and requirements to be able to thrive. There is further need to address the current low level of technological adoption. This arises from various factors, including low level of awareness and digital literacy, which has made us late adopters of technology in most cases. Further to this, innovation is still low, coupled with limited digitalized content, local content. The level of development of e-services, including e-government, is still low. We still find that even our governments are slow on taking up these new technologies. The key question is, how do we ready ourselves to embrace this change? The emerging technologies will leverage on the power of connectivity. Therefore, in order to harness the benefits of emerging technologies, deliberate efforts need to be made towards addressing the identified challenges. We must address the digital divide that currently exists in the country. This will call for the increased connectivity, especially to the underserved and unserved area. I've already said, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the only opportunity we have to bridge the gap between undeveloped and developed countries, where internet will be free for everybody. At UCC, we are empowering all schools with the computer laboratories. I think we have done all government secondary schools now. We have given them computer laboratories. If you don't have a national grid, we give you 20 computers. If you have a national grid, minimum of 40. And we have done this to all the universities as well. And we are the only regulatory body in Africa that does that, by the way. In other countries, it's the government that sponsors all these projects. But at UCC, we have gone ahead and done it on our own. So for the first time, with artificial intelligence, with the modern technology, all you have to do is stream content from Kampala. The Kampala students and Kamwenge students, Karamoja students will access the same content as the same all over. It will be the same. And you don't have to know English. It can even translate in your own language. So that's a big, big achievement that we intend to do. So, but we need cooperation in this one so that everybody knows that we have to drop our culture, belief, and move into new technological advancement. So, sorry about that. Currently, 3G coverage stands at 79% of the population, while 4G coverage is 25%. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry when you hear of 3G and 4G, at times these telcos will cheat you. You know, you've been complaining that the downloads are slow. But they'll be streaming at 3G or 4G, but the consumption is low. We are putting some standards now, and our inspection department is going to increase the inspection level, the compliance, and punitive measure to make sure that the speeds you are downloading are real. However, the reason I'm mentioning this thing is that very few countries, again, in Africa, have got this capacity. I'm talking about you. I know we are being bashed at UCC that I don't have network here and there, but in whole of Africa, nobody can claim 79% of 3G and 25% of 4G. By the way, when you look at Airtel, it is 4G all over the country. They may not have a lot of stations, but we are almost covering the whole country. So we are not doing that badly in Uganda. We have connectivity all over the country. And by the way, again, that we are private-driven driven industry. Did you understand that? The roads get funding from a consolidated fund, electricity from a consolidated fund, but communication, self-funding, investors. I don't know whether Uganda Investment Authority is here. They should have given us an award for that, but we are always humble people hidden in go over there, so nobody knows this. So the mobile network operators need to be supported to achieve at least 100% 3G coverage by 2020. We also need to begin exploring opportunities for deployment of more advanced 5G, which I mentioned earlier on. In order to achieve this, both the government and the private sector need to invest in network expansion as well as innovative infrastructure deployment mechanisms and models. I hope Uganda National Roads Authority is here. Yeah, we have problems with the infrastructure. Every time we run a cable, it is cut, another one comes in, all the time we're cutting these cables. So we need to be organized in that respect. We also need to promote sufficient utilization of radio spectrum to promote the development of emerging services through exploring innovative ways of utilization. When it comes to radio spectrum, we again try our best at UCC. I think we got some friends from South Africa Radio Authority coming to find out whether it's true that we've got 295 FM stations. They couldn't believe that we could plan and manage that without interference. So we are very economical, but also professional. We utilize our spectrum efficiently. And that's why coverage for radio spectrum is 100% in Uganda when it comes to radio. And that's, again, the reason that we have abandoned now FM, we're into digital broadcasting, probably known as the, digital radio, digital audio broadcasting, they call it. So as we extend connectivity, there is a need to further stimulate demand through interventions to ensure that communication services and devices are possible. This includes creating a favorable and a progressive tax regime that encourages investment and assumption of communication services. I didn't agree with someone who said that OTT taxation, I know that study, which was very good, we are going to borrow it, Richard, but you know, maybe this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. You remember OTT issue? Remember OTT? We also said the way it works, it runs over the top, not so. We've spent, okay, MTN says has spent $1 billion investing in the infrastructure here. Now, Mr. Facebook comes and rides on top of that for no cost. You know that, huh? But we are saying, oh, this man has invested $1 billion, how is he going to get his returns back? Now, in Europe, everybody's on data, you know that. So they can afford to forget and to compensate that one out of the volumes they collect from data consumption. But here, if we have got 12 million data consumers, then MTN want to get its what? Return. So we are saying, Mr. Zuckerberg, kindly bring back some of the money you are making from here. Just a little of that money. So if you don't want to do that, then what do we do? Should we allow MTN, Airtel, and other companies to collapse? So the tax was not to tax Rugambo, was just to get return on our investment, because over the top just runs on that infrastructure. That's what they are doing. Now, South America does it. In Europe, of course, I've said they don't do it because the volumes, I don't know how you call it in financial terms, the volume of money that moves in Europe is unbelievable. Turnover. If you look at the nobody can dare touch it. That's why, by the way, when you complain about these over-the-top attacks, for example, and we reported the matter to Facebook, they don't want to touch it because they are protecting their business. You understand? So they make huge, it's the one keeping the economies of Europe moving. You understand? So we don't know this information. For us, we are looking at the freedom of speech, freedom of talking, freedom of what? freedom to starve, freedom to talk, you know, that kind of thing. So we don't believe in that kind of thing, to be honest with you. But it could have been applied differently. That one we're in agreement. Now, we further need to increase digital literacy among the consumers and promote the development and the packaging of local content. We need to harness the power of collaboration with other sectors and agencies so as to leverage on the synergies that exist. Incidentally, for you who were at M10 celebration, we have also got some platforms, the equivalent of social, of WhatsApp. I saw some. Ugandans are now writing applications. They are developing, these young innovators. So instead of depending on an application, a platform made and written and packaged in the United States of America, why don't we do our own here? Don't you think it's a good thing? And they are doing it now. Let's support these youngsters so that we are also independent and we can develop our own country. Now, I will give you another example before I go far, that in Dubai, if you want to use data on WhatsApp, you do it. But if you want to use voice, you can't, because they have disabled that protocol of voice in Dubai. But they have got their own platform. Now, when you use it, you pay about equivalent of about 20 shillings or something. So that money makes a lot of return to put back to the investment that is being, is it called Etisalat? Yeah, that company. So those are the kind of things we should be looking at instead of trying to depend on our foreign innovators. Initiatives geared towards collaboration in development and protection of infrastructure will further reduce the associated costs. So we need more infrastructure. Now, in addition, sharing of information on planned deployment will foster harmonized deployment, especially to underserved and served areas. The global digital economy is dynamic and growing at a fast rate. We, however, need to look at the digital market as a regional bloc as opposed to single country. East Africa is home to 146 million consumers, hence an attractive market for investors. There is thus need to harmonize policy and regulatory framework as well as coordinated initiatives across the region to facilitate the adoption of emerging technologies. The region needs to leverage on successes like One Area Network, which has facilitated intra-regional trade. Additional initiatives are now being undertaken under the East African Community for broadband deployment and cybersecurity, etc. There is need to support innovation in our quest to develop a digital economy, online connectivity increase, coupled with the proliferation of smartphones, the demand for digital content and services increases. This revolution has given birth to the application app economy. They call it as app economy, those application economy that is being practiced in many countries. Application, an analytical firm application, ANI reported that 2016, the global application market was valued at USA 1.3 trillion and is expected to grow to USA $6.3 trillion. The Joint Research Center of the European Commission further indicated that the increasing availability of the internet coupled with improving device capabilities has resulted in demand-driven model with the customers at the center. This demand-driven economy is heavily reliant on data as opposed to the traditional supply based on push model, which was controlled by tech companies. I'm going fast because I think my speech is a bit long and therefore, the local application economy provides another opportunity for ICT sector in Uganda. Uganda can thus position itself as an exporter of digital services to the region and the world. Therefore, we need to create an environment where innovation and development of application is encouraged. There is a need for respect for healthy competition, including respect for intellectual property, and the policy and regulatory environment plays a key role in determining the pace and adoption of new technologies and the extent to which these technologies can lead socio-economic transformation. The government policy and the development process need to be more flexible, agile, and dynamic. And this will yield a variety of communication services that we currently enjoy. However, technology development are outpacing the policy and regulatory development processes. Therefore, Government need to review its process to enable the country benefit from technological advancement. Now, the rest, since, am I running out of time? Yes, okay. So, of course, the World Economic Forum in its 2018, I should conclude with this one, the future of job identifies 10, I wanted to say what Richard said, important skills that should be developed to position the labor force to apply, participate in the emerging labor market. Now, these include critical thinking and analysis, creativity, collaboration, technology design and programming, system analysis, and communication, among others. One of the ways to including these skills is to strengthen the industry-academia partnership. Industry players need to collaborate with academia in informing the curriculum. This will enable access to information on the skills requirement for the industry. Industry players are also required to provide revenue where learners obtain practical hands training. Uganda needs to further develop a mentorship and internship platform between industry and academia where students can access the industry for more intense learning. The academia is further encouraged to seek partnership with the leading international players. Other aspects that need adjustment include investment and financing. The traditional banking and financing mechanisms need to develop innovative financial products to support firms' development in the technological era. Currently, indications are that developing nations have the ability to quickly respond to the rapidly changing of technology because of access to requisite capital, rather than the way we respond to ours without capital. However, emerging nations have a unique opportunity to leapfrog the next level of development by identifying their comparable advantages across sectors. This calls for investing in the right policy framework, skills, market, and innovation. The promise is great only if we ourselves follow some of these examples our neighbors abroad are doing. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mtabazi. Thank you very much. A big round of applause. I'm sure you can walk down yourself. You can walk down yourself. Thank you very much indeed, and for testifying that there is communication and power in Kamwenge. We're going to share the next 3 minutes between energy and networking. The first 1 minute, I'll ask my headmaster, Mr. Fajil Mande, to come and conduct that minute. I'll do the other 2 minutes so that you are not associated with this born before computer thing. Yes, feel free.
Thank you very much. My former student at Kitante Primary School, I was his headmaster. But now he's my boss because he's the MC. He has requested me to take you through a little bit of a stretch because you've been seated for a long time. And I belong to the cluster of the human capacity building. Can I request that you stand off your chair and be free? And get your mind to be ready to be stretched a little bit. I'll leave my microphone and just do it so that we move on. Very good. Just lift up your hand. Relax the body. Let's relax the body. And let's relax. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10. And do that. And enjoy it. And then go forward. And you start to the top. That's good. Back again. 1. Touch the toes. 2. Touch the toes. 3. And go back again. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2. Quickly coming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3. Just enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. Don't do it like a punishment. Okay, there you are. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And last but 1, 1, 2, 3, go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Don't go down. Breathe in. Out. Breathe in. Out. You may take your seat and enjoy yourself.
Another round of applause for Mr. Fajil Mandi. Who didn't like it? Ladies and gentlemen, the next 2 minutes, and I ask for your full attention. Richard said, is this forum important? And he confirmed it was important, that if it delivers anything, at least there is networking. And it's important that we really know ourselves. And I request for your attention. I'm going to run through the list of the CEOs who are present here. It may not be very short, but it also won't be very long, so that thereafter we can continue the dialogue knowing who is there. I will request that you listen, and if you are within moving area, you can actually just rise up so they see you, and at the end we shall all appreciate ourselves. Mr. Anthony Chege, General Manager, Serena Hotels. Engineer Dr. Frank Seboa, Principal Consultant, Frank Energy Consultants. Mr. Philip Karugaba, Head of ENS Africa Advocates. Mr. Geoffrey Chuguru, CEO, Pented Insurance Services Limited. Mr. Celestino Babungi, Managing Director, Umeme. Ms. Gloria Tumwesije, CEO, Uganda Association of Tour Operators. Mr. Paul Senyomo, CEO, Mercantile Credit Bank Limited. Mr. Varghese Thambi, CEO, Diamond Trust Bank. Managing Director, Vivo Energy. Mr. Mark Simwanje, Managing Director, CompuScan. Mr. Derek Nkaja, CEO, CPO Uganda. Mrs. Mwanguzi Irene, Managing Director, Uganda Printing and Publishing Corporation. Mr. Anthony Ndegwa, CEO, CBA, that's Commercial Bank of Africa. Mr. Everest Kayondo, Board Chair, Association of Uganda Tour Operators. Mr. Stephen Asimwe, Chief Executive Officer, UTB. Mr. Joseph Enyimu, Acting Commissioner, Economic Development Policy and Research Department. Ms. Hilda Asimwe, CEO, Digital Health Access. Engineer Kenneth Kaijuka, Acting Chief Executive Officer, National Housing. Mr. Avu Eli Biliku, Executive Director, UMRA. Mr. Geoffrey Byamjisha, Country Managing Partner, Ernst & Young. Mr. Muyingo Jonathan, Chief Executive Officer, BBS. Mrs. Christine Chaineka-Woya, Chief Executive Officer, ICGU. Mr. Basil Ajia, Acting Executive Director, UIA. Mr. Stephen Mukasa, Country Director, SBS. Mr. William Sekabembe, Chief of Business and Executive Director. I guess this is DFCU. Dr. Joseph Muvawala, Executive Director, National Planning Authority. Mr. Richard Byarugaba, MD, NSSF. Engineer Ziria Tibalwa, Executive Director, ERA. Matthias Katamba, Managing Director, Housing Finance Bank. Dr. Sarah Sewanyana, Executive Director, Economic Policy Research Council. Professor Charles Kwesiga, ED, UIRI. Dr. Begumisa Protazio, Commissioner, URA. Ms. Miriam Dozreho, CEO, CIC Insurance Company. Mr. Timothy Etori, ED, Ugaford. Mr. Fajil Mande, Education Consultant. Mr. Sarah Arapta, Managing Director, Citibank. Professor Sam Sejaka, Team Leader, Abacus. Mr. Stephen Kaboyo, CEO, Alpha Capital. Dr. M. Pizemitigo, Vice Chancellor, KIU. Engineer Godfrey Turiai Kayo, Executive Director, REA. Mr. Samuel Kirubi, Managing Director, Equity Bank. Mr. Ronald Kawadwa, CEO, Majestic Brands. Mr. Chisembo Asman, President, AAID. Mr. Jimmy Douglas Mugerwa, Managing Director, Talo Uganda. Mr. Francis Ogwang, Country Manager, East Africa Development Bank. Mr. Chris Kabagambe, Managing Director, Top Finance Bank. Mr. Andrew Ntegeka, Director, C&A Pharmacy. Mr. James Sebugenyi Mukasa, partner, Sewalu and Lule Advocates, Mr. Patrick Ngolobe, Chief Executive Officer, AELS, Mr. Peter Businje, Managing Director, Oryx, Mr. Francis Kamulegea, Director, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Wilbrod Humphrey Owor, Executive Director, Uganda Bankers Association, Mr. Michael Kawoya Mweve, Managing Director, CBS FM, Mr. Peter Mujimba, Partner, Alliance Advocates, Mr. Mark Anthony Muyobo, Executive Director, Bank of Uganda, Mr. Obi, a member, Managing Director, Total, Mr. Shem Kakembo, Managing Director, EFC, Mr. Johnson Omolo, General Manager, NTV, Mr. Paul Kavuma, Chief Executive Officer, Uganda Insurance Association, Ms. Jennifer Banjirana, Country Manager, EnviroServe, Mr. Robert Kwesiga, Secretary General, Uganda Red Cross, Ms. Fiona Nabasa Gladys, Vice President, Uganda Law Society, Alhaji Kadunabi Ibrahim Lubega, CEO, Insurance Regulatory Authority of Uganda, Mr. John Brittle, Managing Partner, Amani Partners, Mr. Bildad Baguma, ED, JMS, Mr. Paul Wiso, CEO, Uganda Securities Exchange, Mr. Simon Kusima, General Manager, Old Mutual Insurance, OHTwa Robert Wagwan Sibirwa, Director, Bridge Credit Finance, Mr. Stephen Mwanje, Director, Bridge Credit Finance and Leyland, East Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, that is your community this afternoon. Please appreciate yourselves. I want to thank Stephen really for your indulgence. I thank you for really having our board with us all this time. You were in early and have accommodated everybody, but we've moved away from those sectors we called core services, and then there is this new area. No one talks about where the new money is going to come from. Please join me welcome Mr. Stephen Asimwe, CEO, Uganda Tourism Board. He's a former CEO and editor-in-chief of East African Business Week, which is based in 6 countries. He holds a master's in management and leadership from Development Associates International. He also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Social Sciences. He's a faculty lecturer of Haggai Institute of Leadership in Hawaii, USA. He headed the tourism cluster, and he's here to tell us a story. Welcome, Stephen.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It seems to be some subduedness, but Mzee Fadil showed us he's still a young man, a child in Boko. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I'm here to represent the tourism cluster, which is essentially made up of both government and private sector players. Within our portfolio, from government is the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, the Uganda Tourism Board, which I represent, the Uganda Wildlife Authority, we have Uganda Wildlife Education Center, we have the Uganda Hotel Tourism and Training Institute, we have the Ngamba Island Sanctuary, but we also have a very powerful consortium of people who represent the private sector. The apex body is the Uganda Tourism Association, which is basically made up of the Association of Tour Operators, the Uganda Hotel Owners Association. We have a group called USAGA, the Uganda Safari Guides Association, UKOTA, Uganda Community Tourism Association. We have the Tugata, the people responsible for ticketing and airline services. Recently, we were joined by a very important group of people, very silent but very pivotal. That's the people responsible for manufacturing of and production of crafts, memorabilia, mementos, and then again we were joined by another group of very important people, the Uganda Tourism Women's Association. Just as a matter of information, tourism employs the largest number of people in the world. 1 out of 11 people is employed by tourism. It's on average the biggest foreign exchange earner for many countries. 6%, but for Uganda it is at 10%. But just for purposes of introduction, I like the CEO Forum, and I really thank you guys for setting it up. And it's a place, it's a factory of ideas. And I picked a very important antidote, so to speak, from our senior colleague, Professor Kwesiga. He said something to the effect that starting small is inevitable, but he said something that gave me a big punch in the chest. He said, staying small is inexcusable. I liked that. If there is one note I'm taking away from here, it is that quote. I don't know who wrote it. Is it yours? Is it original copyright? So we can start paying you some money. Okay. Thank you. Like I said just earlier, that our cluster was made up of both the private sector and government sector. But it's important to note at this point in time that we are standing at the bright time of a group of 7 billion people. And these 7 billion people have one thing that is a very big pull factor, and that's an experience. Now, tourism is experiential. We say that tourism invokes the 5 senses. Tourism is about sight. It's about touch. It's about smell. You can feel the smell of an atmosphere even if you're not there. It's about taste. It's about hearing. So tourism is a very, very essential component of human nature, and it varies with different people. Africans have a sense of experience which is different from Europe, different from America, different from the Asians. In my last 4 and very close to 5 years at the helm of Uganda Tourism Board, I came in with some notions, but my thinking is different. I was in China recently, and the way the Chinese travel and experience is completely different. The Chinese are motivated by different factors. They like to engage with people. The Americans are very high octave. They have adrenaline, they have Red Bull in their system. They like the punch, they like to fly, they like to drive. The Japanese are quiet, they are subtle, but they like the detail. They like to smell the flowers, they like to be in the bush. We have another group of people who like the spiritual environment. They like to hear from God. They like to basically calm down and have a taste of the environment. Very interestingly, Uganda, by any comparison, by any estimate of measurement, is the only country I know, of course I'm marketing here, and I am biased, but so be it, is the one country in the world where every one of those elements we have in this country. Thank you. Whether it's by act of God or by coincidence, we have it. Uganda is home to the world's largest collection of primates, 54% of mountain gorillas, over 5,000 chimps, monkeys, baboons, some of them very, very hopeless. They come and enter your cars. Recently, they attacked a group of MPs who carelessly opened their windows with a very important bunch of bananas. So there was a fight in parliament. Where a group of parliamentarians is, there is parliament. So Kwatako. Uganda is home to, obviously, you know all of this, the source of the world's longest river. And what is very interesting is that, did you know that Uganda has the world's largest cultural diversity per square inch? 64 tribes and language groups found in this country. Over 2,000 feet above sea level, we are right on the equator, snow, hot and cool climate. Anyone would love to stay here. Recently, we were doing a master plan for the Rwenzori Mountains, and we discovered that Uganda is home to a very rare three-horned chameleon. Yes, it's home to a very, very rare species of animals. Recently, again, I think in the papers about 3 weeks ago, a rare cob of one of those horned animals was discovered in one of our national parks. We are home to the Uganda Matters. And very interestingly, we did statistics and we found that Uganda has the largest engagement of people in one place. 4 million visitors in the last count at the June the 3rd Uganda Matters. The only Baha'i temple on the African continent. The second largest mosque, Gaddafi. I don't know how many of you have been there. Beautiful piece of architecture. The second after the biggest mosque in Africa, which is found in Morocco. There's something else that we take for granted, and that is our people. We've been voted the most hospitable and the most friendly people on earth. Yes. So when we are talking about hospitality training, we already have 50%. Ugandans are so hospitable, they are so good. Forget about some of the things that happen in the papers. I think they're just trying to get out of their shell. But I like to use this analogy. I always go take my children to the hospitals, and sometimes we wait in the queue. And then I overhear, you're seated next to a patient, and then you overhear a patient's dialogue with the doctor. And I'm not going to divulge secrets, but there's one secret that I will tell you between doctors and patients. So the guy walks in, and the doctor asks him, "Good morning." The guy says, "Good morning. How are you?" The patient says, "I am fine." "What is your problem?" The patient says, "I'm about to die." Wow, what a contradiction. I am fine, I am about to die. But that's because Ugandans are very courteous. They don't like to offend people. And that happens a lot even in our culture. And we sell that. Very interestingly, I like to visit people's homes. I come from a culture in the southwest, but I like the cultures in the central Uganda. You find the guy at the gate, you hoot, you greet the guy, he's your host. So you drive up to the driveway, he closes his gate, you get out of the car, he greets you. You enter his house, you sit, then he greets you again. Then you wonder, okay, I greeted him at the gate, I greeted him at the car, and I'm greeting him again. But that's our culture. And we sell it. By the way, that is a product. If you didn't know, today is the opportunity to sell how you greet the Mpakos. We are trying to develop a product where every visitor in Uganda lives with a Mpako, a Boki, a Moti, a Kiki. So you're John Smith, and at the airport we christen you John Aboki Smith. I will give you a serious passport with a new name, but you give us $10. That's an opportunity. So I come here to basically, I want to whet your appetite about this very, very important cluster, a very important resource. We say that tourism is the only industry without a factory. It's the only industry without smoke. I know Richard would suggest that the financial sector also doesn't have smoke, but sometimes it does. I've seen a couple of banks burning, so maybe that's something to discuss about. I would have started with the challenges, but I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist. Every challenge is an opportunity in tourism. You ask Rwanda about the genocide, they will tell you we are making a lot of money from that big challenge. Or the Jews in Germany or Poland, the Auschwitz places where the Jews were killed. But still, that's an opportunity. But I would like to very, very quickly draw your attention to the fact that as a country, we have this very, very important resource. My colleagues from the Uganda Wildlife Authority, from whom I'm representing, have a very, very fantastic product. We have 10 national parks, 12 game reserves. We have what we call wildlife areas. We have wildlife sanctuaries. We also have protected areas. And then we have a very important resource, the National Forest Authority, with over 300 forests. Those are fantastic opportunities. It's very obvious that we went through a lot of challenges because of our history. You all know that we have had more conflict than any country we neighbor with. We've lost more people to conflict, to civil war, to epidemics than all the genocides in our neighborhood put together. And yet Ugandans are very resilient people. They bounce back and fly. And because of that, we want to harness that opportunity that we have as a country. Uganda Airlines, thank you very much. I grew up in a banking family. I was born in a bank. I graduated in a bank and left my father in the bank. Now, you talked about people who lose jobs. I think bankers have a longer lifestyle. I'm a testament to that. But very interestingly, because of my father's vocation, we moved to different towns of the country. And in the early 70s, you can tell my age now, we moved to a small town called Kilembe, 1974. And we're very, very close to a national park, Queen Elizabeth. I remember in 1974, my mom likes gardening, and would have all these wildlife walking away from the national park and actually coming and eating my mom's tomatoes and her flowers. 1974, we go in, the place is beautiful. We used to see buffaloes very close to Kasese town. Back then, I think we had an elephant herd of over 30,000. In almost 10 years, all of that was decimated because of civil war. And I'm not going to apportion any blame, no politics here. But suddenly, we lost everything, literally everything. We had the best hotels, the best hotel managers, the best of everything. Uganda was actually almost at par with Kenya. We used to have people flying in, almost 200,000 leisure visitors flying into Uganda. Before BA, I think it was British Overseas Airways Corporation and all those groups. We had a fleet of cars parked in Mombasa, having brought by ship. And back then, of course, many travelers used to use their cars. They would put the cars on the Mombasa port, and then they would come by railways up to the railway station here. The travelers would fly in from Entebbe, they would be picked up, and they would do a drive across the country. Queen Elizabeth, Murchison, Kidepo were the main wildlife areas. In just 20 years alone, we had lost almost 80% of our wildlife. Of course, with all these problems that came with the wars, looting, etc., etc. At that point in time, our neighbors took off. Kenya, and much later Tanzania, after Ujamaa opened up. Zambia was doing very well. Zimbabwe, back then it was called Rhodesia. South Africa was a no-go area. There was a sudden shift in the landscape of tourism, especially in Africa. So by 1986, we still had problems. Between 1986 and 2006, thereabouts, long story short, literally all our game parks were under siege. Queen Elizabeth under ADF, Murchison under Kony, Kidepo under the rustlers. Rwenzururu rebels up in the north, we literally did very, very badly when our neighbors were doing a trajectory. But thank God, around 2006, Uganda made one fundamental strategy. We brought in the Commonwealth heads of government. You remember when the Queen came here, 2007, 2008. And overnight, the landscape opened. I can tell you from 2007, Uganda earned $370 million. In the last 14, 15 years, Uganda is now earning $1,400 million thanks to the opening of the space. There is no industry I know in this country, coffee, tea, I don't know whether we still have tobacco, which has had a trajectory of growth like tourism. And this is thanks to every one of you. The financial sector, the infrastructure sector, power, banking, airlines, civil aviation, everybody opened up to this space, and Uganda has now become a hotspot for tourism arrivals. In the last 10 years alone, we have seen over 10 airlines coming to Uganda. Others have increased on body size because they have to accommodate the numbers, and others have increased on capacity of frequency arriving in the country. I think just yesterday, I think Ethiopian Airlines is adding a 5th flight to the country because there is an increased demand to come into this country to do business, to do sports, and very interestingly, entertainment. We have seen an increase of people coming around Thursday evening. And then on Sunday nights, I have flown out with people literally finished. They have to wake them up at arrival because they danced the whole night, thanks to Governor, I don't know, Angenoa and the other places. So Uganda has become an entertainment hotspot. So with all of those things that I've talked about, what needs to be done? And what are we doing to create Uganda as the favorable destination? Number one, we've decided that we are going to have a strategic policy and incentives environment, creating an environment that's going to create investment that is worth it. Last year we had the Space for Giants Club Investment Summit. I'm glad to report that about 4 big companies have shown interest. The Uganda Wildlife Authority has begun to sign concessions for these companies to come in. But I want to suggest this, that there is space for people to invest in tourism, in the areas of accommodation, in the areas of service delivery, in areas of training and skills development that can help to facilitate the process. We need to do more product development. Research has shown that on average, when people come to Uganda, beyond having the experience in the national park or going to any place of geographical significance, most of them go back with their money, besides the entertainment they have. This is because we have not provided enough things for them to be able to spend on. Now in tourism, we talk about the 2 S's and the 2 V's. The first S is stay, how long someone stays in a place, whether a few minutes, hours, a day, plus. The other one is spend. It's very, very critical that we be able to bring in as much spend as possible. We've been given a target of 4 million visitors to Uganda and an equivalent income of $2.7 billion. Now, from where I sit, I am against big numbers unless they make economic sense. I'd rather have 100,000 visitors giving me 2 billion than have 1 million visitors who are moving on boda and eating bananas in Nakasero. They are called backpackers. The only people they benefit are the airlines which bring them, but they bring very little economic value. So we need to create products that are going to bring in more people, but more importantly, bring in more money. For us, volume is not a big deal. It's the value proposition that the person is coming with. So we want to work on that. And to that extent, we have put together a tourism master plan, 2014-2024. It is accessible online. You can get it. We are putting together a strategic plan, which we should be launching shortly. We have a marketing strategy that is coming out very soon, a brand strategy. We are getting a domestic public relations and marketing firm to be able to reach different people. We are developing the regions across the country. Now, one of the themes the theme that has been put before us, and I like it very much, is making economic growth inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. We have a very, very good module that has come from the Uganda Wildlife Authority. That is where the national parks are able to share the income at 20% with the communities around them. And it's actually doing wonders. But more importantly, how inclusive are we? And just yesterday, we had a meeting with the UNDP on an all-inclusive program for ensuring that people are part and parcel of the tourism industry and its sustainability. We're also putting together a Uganda Conventions Bureau. one of the things that is really, really very good for us as a country is the fact that at no point are we frozen or are we too hot. So when we pitch to international trade fairs where we have trade shows for what is now called MICE. MICE is an acronym for meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. It's one of the biggest things that is happening. We hope to launch this in December, and our projections are we shall have a MICE convention, the UCB in Entebbe, very close to the international airport, and should be able to attract anywhere from $25 million in the first year to 35 to 50 to 75 as we cascade along. And that should be able to bring us more capacity. We have also invested some money in international marketing. We have hired 3 MDRs. MDRs are marketing destination representatives. The first one is a company called PHG in North America, in USA and Canada. We hired another one in the UK and Ireland. And we hired another one in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. We are in the process of signing up one in China, one in Japan, and one in the Gulf states. And consequently, we'll open up to the Gulf state, to the Nordic countries, and also the regional neighbors. Overnight, since 2016, when we hired these companies, we have seen an increase of 250% at the entry points in Uganda Wildlife Authority receipt areas. So it's overnight. These companies have been representing us, even in public relations. We have flown in top guys, CNN, Washington Post, the Tribune, the Herald, the Toronto Star, all these companies, and our visibility has improved. Of course, only last week, a big man called Kanye West came in here. Eventually, he was given a name from my village, Kanye Sije, with his wife. Again, those are some of the low-lying fruits that come with it. But suddenly, we've seen a buzz in USA and Canada. I'll just give you a simple secret. Please don't quote me. This company was brought in by somebody, and he was given a task, or they were given a task to identify an African country where to shoot a video. Without naming names, the first country they went to, they said, too crowded. They went to a second country, they were tossed around. They were a bit too arrogant. They went to a third country, they didn't have water. They went to the fourth country, no product. And these are not very far from where we are. They went to a fifth country with a laundry list of 10 items. The man reported 25. The guy said, I am coming. I'm going to see Trump first, then I come to that country. That country is Uganda. So you can see the opportunities are available. Very good opportunities in sports. We've just opened a fantastic 18-hole golf course at Chigo in Serena. It's been built, one of the best golf courses on the continent. We have 18 others to develop. And I wish to appeal to the people in local government. We used to have some of the best golf courses. I know this because my father was a golfer. But when you go to some of these golf courses, you see other species. You see maize, you see matoke, and you wonder where is the 18th hole. Some of those places are dilapidated, but fortunately we've started to engage the local governments. We are working with the Uganda Golf Union to reclaim, recover, redevelop, and be able to sell these products. And I'm glad that some of them are picking up. Of course, you know what happened to our equator. A guy was reversing and he reversed in our equator. But fortunately, it woke us up. Because sometimes we take these things for granted until there's an outcry. I wish to inform you that now we are working on an equator redevelopment plan. We are working on the source of the Nile. We're looking at creating an investment conference for Ugandans. I think we have sizable capital. And Richard, you are sitting on some very good resources. I was very jealous of the 2.5 billion you have raised. Is it possible we can reinvest 3? Fantastic. Can we reinvest some of that money? And we are going to call you for a domestic investment conference on tourism. And all of you can be part of this. Let me tell you how. We've developed a product called a homestay. Now, a homestay is basically a house with a bedroom, with a flushing toilet, although others prefer to do exercise elsewhere, with a net and a good smile. You do the Ugandan thing, Oriotia Nyavbo. You welcome the people. You serve them food. You take them to your garden. People don't know where coffee is grown. Next week, we are hosting a very powerful guy from Costa Rica. We're going to start coffee tourism because coffee, people take coffee. It's the biggest crop now. It's the black gold, as they say. But people do hardly know where it is grown. Now, Uganda is Africa's largest exporter of both Arabica and Robusta coffee. #1. But we get very little money from our beans. So we are saying, is it possible that on top of growing this nice little product, can we create an experience around it? And so we are flying in a guy from Costa Rica. And very interestingly, there's 2 types of coffee in the world. There's Robusta and Arabica. Arabica has its roots in Ethiopia, in a place called Kaffa. That's why it's called coffee. But Robusta, we have traced the epicenter and the origins of Robusta coffee in Uganda, not very far from where Mr. Mutavazi comes from, in Chibale Forest. We have wild coffee, hundreds of thousands of years old. It is growing there. We have applied to UNESCO World Heritage Sites so that they give us that certificate to say coffee was first grown here. So anyone of you staying nearby or wanting to invest, please, there is an opportunity there. But even if you don't, you can create a coffee plant near your house and say, this is the original coffee, and people will give you money. Now, it's important that we create products that will give us that recognition, but more importantly, we have seen a rise in the numbers, and we want to see how then can we make best value. Ugandans have an affinity to build the best houses in the village. Guys, that's an opportunity. So we are starting an agro-tourism venture where we want to register you so that your house can accommodate visitors and you earn $20, $30, $40, $50. Because I know that for most of you, you only go to the village when you have lost a relative, on Christmas, or when you have events around your homes. How much more if you earn some money from that 10-bedroomed house? That's a good retirement package, and probably send some money to NSSF. Would that be a good deal? So, one of the things we have also seen is the need to develop capacity, and government has invested a couple of $1 million now in Jinja at the Uganda Hotel Tourism and Training Institute. We broke ground in April of this year, and we hope that the first phase of a 3- to 4-star world-class training facility will be opened next year to roll out good managers and good hospitality practitioners. Now, a lot of discussion in the earlier part of the day oscillated around technology. In the last 10 years, there has been a global shift in the way technology moves. We've seen the emergence of platforms like Twitter and WhatsApp. I can tell you that in the next 10 years, there's going to be a very, very fundamental shift. Richard talked about people going to lose jobs. In the tourism sector, people are losing jobs, but also opportunities. Have you heard of the Airbnb? Airbnb was born by default. Nobody sat there to create it. An opportunity just came from nowhere. In September every year, 3 events take place in New York. There's the UN Summit, there's the US Open tennis, and there's the UN Fashion Show. That traffic of people comes in and creates a lot of pressure. So one day, this group of people wanted to watch tennis. They walk into the city, and there's no accommodation. The hotels are booked. It's terrible. I've been there around that time. You literally have to go to another state to get accommodation, because for us in government, you want to save on per diem. So they tell you $1,000 a night. You say, boss, I'd rather sleep in a car. So this group of people came, long story short, and there was an old guy with his friend, you know, these elderly, you know, pensioners. They were sitting outside and they saw people moving with suitcases. So they asked them, what's your problem? We've run out of accommodation. The hotels are booked. We can't get any booking. We wouldn't mind if we stayed in your sitting room we would pay any amount of money. Boom! An idea came up. These two guys sat and said, by the way, why don't we accommodate these guys? We make some money from them. And that's what they did. Before long, all the pensioners on the street had accommodated people. And before long, Airbnb was born. Airbnb is air, bed, and breakfast. Air mattress, bed, and breakfast. Now it is the fastest accommodation online facility. Uber, you know it. The Ugandans have now created their own application and they are, by the way, driving many people out. I can see my friends standing up. You took my time, so give me some minute, 1 second. But so I'm suggesting that we need to develop basic applications around our homes, around our communities, around our setups that can be able to attract some of this traffic that is coming in. Of course, as I conclude, we're in the process, or government is in the process of establishing a national airline. I am a believer that if it is run well, it's a good place to invest. We can start small, domestic, because domestic traffic has increased, by the way. It's just expensive. We now have 6 flights a day between Entebbe, Kajansi, and some of the aerodromes up country where the tourists are going. I talked to you about when we were young kids. In the 70s, we used to fly by Uganda Airlines. Young kids, we even had students' rates. Uganda is now 42 million people. Our economy has increased significantly, especially in the middle class. So why can't we have daily flights to Kasese, to Hoima, to Soroti, for a paltry amount of money if we can invest in a national airlines? I think the discussion is moving that way. As I conclude, we're going to see in the next 5 years an increase in the brands of hotels, but the secret lies in small, nice boutique facilities. The modern traveler is private. He likes his comfort, but he likes to deal with the people. We did a survey about 2 years ago during an exit group of people, tourists who are leaving the country. And in tourism, we talk about the impressions, the 3 impressions. The first impression, many people come to Uganda thinking Idi Amin, Africa, poor country, da da da. They get to Entebbe, the smile disarms them. The people treat them well, sometimes not very well. So they go to maybe Bwindi or Mgahinga or Queen or Murchison or Kidepo, have an experience. So they have a first impression, which changes. They have a last impression as they leave the country. Good people, good food, weather, bumpy road sometimes, very good experience. So they are treating. The third thing we look at is the lasting impression. So you have first impression, last impression, and then you have the lasting impression. That thing that sticks to you in your psyche. I always tell people, the one thing I don't forget is the guy who bullied me in S1. I meet him in town, he's one of you, but he's not here today. And he used to like spraying himself with Old Spice. I hate Old Spice because it reminds me of bullies. So that is my lasting impression of my S1 experience. So the lasting impression, that thing that you carry with you 10, 50 years later, we did an exit survey with a group of tourists, age group, women, men, pensioners, young people, blah, blah, blah. The one thing that came out best, that scored highest, fantastic, the food, da, 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 da. The one thing that came out strongly, and everybody signed on it, was the people of Uganda are fantastic. Yes, we can clap for it. So whatever else we do, can we invest in our people, in that friendship, in that smile, beyond the technology, beyond the environment, and it's important, beyond in everything that we do. We must invest in our people because it's our biggest resource. And when they go back, they say, Uganda is a fantastic country, but the people were the best. So I'd like to leave you with the people thing. I don't want to call it people power. I'm dressed in a red tie, don't worry. But there's a sector that we need to put our money in. That sector is tourism. In tourism, we say tourism is everybody's business. Fix the roads, the people will come. Fix the airwaves, the people will come. Fix the ICT, the banking sector. Security, we put in money in tourism police to ensure security of persons and people. We want to invest in the human resource of this country. And so if our money can go towards equipping the people, giving them skills, we shall be able to do that. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
A round of applause for Stephen. Sometimes we don't know these things, but they're just around us to touch. Thank you very much, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, the story has been told. I think it resonates with Isaiah in the Bible that I'm making things new. Something new is happening. Do you see it? The clusters have told us thus far. Uganda, a tourist destination. Uganda overflowing with power. Uganda with all the money, according to Richard. And all the opportunities. Uganda, an agricultural country, naturally endowed. And there's no reason why we should not get the people to put their hands, dip their hands into the mud. And who is going to do it? Stephen asked, or he stated, do the roads, people will come. And that really lands very well on the next and last presentation, which I will have to cut to 5 minutes, on public investment and infrastructure. Join me, welcome Mr. Gilbert Agassi, the Managing Director of Vivo Energy, for just short of 18 months, bringing in a wealth of experience of over 22 years from all over the continent. And he's a qualified energetics engineer from the National Polytechnic Institute, Felix Houphouët-Boigny, in Côte d'Ivoire, but I guess you'll be speaking in English. Or you translate your French should you opt to. Welcome Gilbert Agassi to sum it up with the investment and the direction. Ladies and gentlemen, you should actually clap loud because we're live on TV. We're live on NTV. So they will remind you when you get back home that what had happened. Of course, 12 o'clock does not mean we just have to run to that place, but let's give Gilbert Agassi the attention, sum it up for us, and right away we'll call the respondents as we wind down. Thank you once again. Over to you, Gilbert.
Five minutes is very little, so I'll try to be very quick. But before I start, I want you to know two things about me. The first one was already highlighted. I'm not Ugandan, I come from Côte d'Ivoire, so I'm primarily a French-speaking person. And second thing to know is I'm not an economist, so I'm going to talk about public investment in infrastructure from a common citizen's point of view and from the point of view of somebody who's working for the private sector. So I'm going to be very quick. I'm an engineer, so we go straight to the point. I'm going to highlight 3 points. A few key facts about investments in Uganda, some challenges, point out just a few of the challenges, and some proposals. Next slide. I believe the reason why I should be talking about it is this quote from a report by the World Bank saying that every 1 shilling that is invested in infrastructure, in public infrastructure, is generating less than 1 shilling. does not mean that's the World Bank. It means that we really need to look at how we do the investments to make sure that they are generating economic growth. And just to share one of the 3 points that I've picked from my readings, Uganda's economy has been growing very fast, and it started to slow down since 2010, according to the World Bank. And we could see it with the GDP numbers that we're getting for the last 3 years. So we need these public investments. Next slide, please. We need these public investments to come in and to boost economic growth. The other point is for Uganda to bridge the gap between what we are investing today and what is needed to sustain a high growth rate is about 0.4 billion US dollars. That's a deficit in public investment. And that shows clearly that we need to continue and find ways to build more infrastructure. The third point is the infrastructure in Uganda is mostly funded out of borrowings. And that puts a lot of pressure in the domestic resources because you need to service that debt, and it's costing a lot of money. So quickly, a few challenges that I picked here and there, which I would like to just go through. We need to make sure that we have the right planning and that we choose the projects. We select the ones that are really bringing value. We need to think about how we get these infrastructure projects financed in a better manner. And we need to really make sure that implementation is done effectively and efficiently. And one of the things that Africans are not good at is maintaining. We need to find ways to keep our infrastructures in good shape and in good condition. And of course, while we are doing this, make sure that we don't compromise the future by taking into account environment preservation. So out of these challenges, I would like to make a few proposals which are just sparking thoughts and thinking about how we can do things a bit differently. I believe, and these are my personal thoughts because our cluster has not met yet, but under the direction of the cluster lead, we're going to meet very quickly and come out with deeper proposals. But from my point of view, we really need to prioritize high-impact infrastructure projects. And what I believe to be this kind of projects are investments into irrigation, for instance, water and sanitation, rural electrification. We heard from the lady from ERA who talked about how good we are at power generation, but how little penetration we have in this country. There's a lot to do, which will bring a lot of value. And about financing, it's very important to start really giving priority to public-private partnerships. It has started, but Uganda is a bit behind some other countries which are doing very well in that sector. As a private sector person, we are really looking forward to being part of this partnership. And in the domain I'm working, we have already made proposals to build some of the infrastructure that are coming with regard to the oil development. So public-private partnerships are known to be one of the best financing mode for public infrastructure. They may not be the best in some of the cases, we know that, but in most of the cases, there are solutions. And from studies, domestic resources are known to be one of the best financing solutions for public investment. So what we need to do is to increase tax collection so that we reduce dependence on foreign borrowing to finance the public investments. And while we are doing this, we need to make sure that these investments are going to benefit to the population. And for the population to be able to get the best out of these investments, we need people who are educated. We need people who are in good health. So public investment should also be focusing on education and social and health infrastructure to make sure that there are people who can really be able to use those roads and do exportation, who are healthy enough to start really doing own businesses, and whatever advantage they can take out of the investment that has been done. So this kind of investment in social infrastructure is also critical to make sure that public infrastructure are being exploited to the right level. And I would like to conclude on one of the things I believe should really be helpful, because we've seen a lot of leakages and spills, financial leakages when it comes to public investments. And it doesn't apply only to Uganda. I am very African, and I've been working in 7 different African countries now. And I believe as Africans there are some critical things that we need to do to make sure that our investments are being done at the right cost and with the right quality of execution. And what I would suggest is really to put in place a full control framework. And there are quite a number of government bodies here in Uganda that are tasked with this. We need to give them that empowerment for them to exercise their duties and make sure that the controls are strict and tight enough to discourage misbehaviors and breaches, and to apply a zero tolerance when there are breaches. I believe this will really help the economy getting the benefits from the public infrastructures that are being built. I would like to end on one of the things that happened to me. When I graduated as an engineer, I was offered 2 jobs. You know, in those days, so it was not that difficult to get a job. It's not the case now in most of the countries, but I was offered 2 jobs. One was a public service. I was to be the manager of our Ministry of Works in my country owns a lot of machines to build roads and to maintain them. So I was recruited to be the manager of the equipment in the eastern region of my country. And at the same time, I was offered a job by a private company to be a salesperson. I was supposed to be selling irrigation and pumping and water sanitation materials. And when I asked my father what I should do, he said, you don't even need to think. You go for the public service, because there you have security of employment. And he told me, if you go to the private sector, they will fire you at the first mistake you will make. And I looked at the offers. The public service salary was very, very little. And the private sector was offering me 4 times what the public service was to give me. So I didn't listen to my father. I went to the private sector. And because we were selected out of an examination, the person who was coming right after me got that job in the public service. So he went to the east of the country, and when we met 2 years later, the first thing I noticed is he was driving a very big car. So I started discussing with him, "Guy, how come you look so wealthy?" And he explained to me that he had property, had houses, he had several cars. And me, I was creeping with my small 205. This is a French car. We call it 205, a Peugeot car. And the guy was driving a big Toyota Camry. And I started thinking maybe my father was right. But what struck me behind that is I remembered that salary. So how comes the guy is so wealthy after only 2 years with that salary? I would like to stop here and let you to think about what's happening and what we should do about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. Thank you very much indeed for tolerating my squeeze, but you really delivered your point. I think you remember the salary. Maybe you also did wonder how many hospitals were to be done and probably how many roads were to be done. But we'll enthuse on that as we proceed in the next part. Ladies and gentlemen, our hands together, we have come to the end of the first part and the most important part of the presentation from the clusters. And I think on that basis, the theme has been delivered. We will proceed to have, because the minister would like to have feedback, and one of the ways of soliciting feedback is by getting the policymakers to respond on the understanding of the issues presented and what promise they put on the table to proceed putting all this together. We will do it within the time allocated, but with a 10-minute saving, thereby perhaps reducing 5 from each of the responses to be able to get on track. If you may, please oblige me so that we all make sure that our CEOs, it's very difficult to get their time and holding them this long. We will start with Dr. Sarah Sewanyana, the Executive Director, Economic Policy Research Center. Over to you. The floor is yours. Over to the podium. Thank you very much, Dr. Sewanyana. You're tired of applauding presenters, ladies and gentlemen? She will take issue with me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh dear. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Sarah.
Thank you so much. I wish to thank the organizers of this forum and also all the presenters plus their cluster members for the work well done. Thank you so much. Today's theme speaks to the Sustainable Development Goal, the SDG. To me, I think that's very good. And given the fact that we are thinking about the National Development Plan number 3, whatever we are discussing here can easily get into that. Today we've listened in to the role of the private sector in making Uganda's economic growth inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. And these are all buzzwords from the World Bank, yeah? Rachel? Yes? So all these are buzzwords. So I was listening in to hear the private sector telling me that whatever we are doing is really inclusive. I did not get that, okay? To hear that whatever we are doing is equitable. I expected to get it from ERA, the lady is gone. I wanted to hear that, and also to hear whether it is sustainable. And I wanted to hear that from the minister. I'm sorry I came in late. Maybe he had already talked about it. So to me, I think this theme is so important if we are to transform our economy and be able to achieve our aspiration as articulated in the 2040 vision. But that said, I come from the Economic Policy Research Center. We are the only think tank in Uganda that focus on economic issues with a constructive lens, where we try as much as possible to guide government, but through a constructive engagement. We've just completed our work on fostering a sustainable agro-industrialization agenda for Uganda, which really fits in well with the theme that we are discussing. Because in that work, we told the government that government, you don't know how to do business. It is really the private sector that is going to help us to deliver this agenda that we are looking for. So we are looking at that private sector as a game changer for Uganda to achieve the agro-industrialization agenda. That said, what are some of the high-level policy responses that I have picked from the presentation? The first one is execution, execution, execution. All of this we have had since morning. We already know most of this information. We've already interacted with government. We've told government about all these issues. But I think the problem remains around execution, execution. The second one, listening in, I think there is a need to have effective evidence-based engagement of the private sector with government. I listened in to the paper from Jocelyn, where she talked about capacity utilization of 53%. Now, if you tell government that the capacity utilization is 50%, 53%, maybe government will think that is doing well, okay? Because that's an average figure, okay? It's average. And probably that explains why the lady from ERA, when she came in, she thought that addressing electricity alone will take us to 100%, okay? So I think there is need for us to be able to package what we need from government. We need to package it better for us to really get a buy-in. The second one is on the program approach when it comes to skilling Ugandans. I think this came out from Professor Kwesiga when he was talking about the skilling. Because we shall all remember that Uganda has so many skilling programs which are so disjointed. Some are being driven by donors and some are being driven by government. So I think we need to have a program approach so that we can get the best out of the investment that we are all making in this area. The third one comes in around the role of R&D and innovation. This came out very well in the presentation by Professor Kwesiga, where he talks about the research and development, and also from the paper from NSSF, especially on the role of innovations, as well as the paper from tourism by Mr. Asimwe. The issue of innovation came out well. And the question I can raise here, then how best can we scale up some of these innovations that we have listened to? How can government support the scale up of some of these good innovations, and how best can we share the experiences across the board? The other area that came out is on integrated planning. I think it came out from the ERA presentation, where the lady talked about the physical planning, that it is very, very difficult for them to provide electricity where in the way that our planning is done. So I think we need a lot of integrated planning, and I think this is the area where the National Planning Authority is heading to, because it is very, very important to have integrated planning. Short of that, we shall not really have the inclusive and sustainable growth that we talk about. In other words, we must be able to connect the dots across the entire value chain of whatever we are looking at. The other one came on, again from Dr. Kwesiga. He talked about borrowing a reef from what worked in the past. In other words, what he was telling us, we have to learn, unlearn, and also relearn. We shouldn't really forget our past, especially where things worked well. It won't do bad for us to go back to that, especially when it comes to the human capital development. There was also an issue of addressing the gaps in the regulatory framework. This came out almost in all the presentations, that we need to address that, and we need also to ensure compliance and enforcement. The last paper came out with an issue of the fact that we need to balance between social spending and infrastructure development. This is something that we've been talking about all the time, but we need to do so with a long-term lens. The paper from NSSF also talked about embracing data revolution or big data, and where possible, we should be able to create a knowledge gap. I must admit that if somebody tells me that tell us more about the private sector in Uganda, I don't have, much as I come from a research institution, I don't have any information. Tell somebody that go here, go there, because even the information at WUMA may not really be sufficient. Even if I go to UIA, again, the data there is not sufficient. So we need to have a hub where we can be able to organize information on our private sector. The other one is on the economy-wide modeling that we need to, I don't know whether it sounds so technical, we need to really embrace it. And this came out from the electricity paper, where Mrs. Iwako told us about the electricity pricing. And she told us that they consider 3 factors. One is exchange rate, inflation, and fuel prices. Okay? But somebody who is seated in the Ministry of Finance is going to propose to government that increase the fuel prices by adding some value. Now, if somebody from Ministry of Finance does that without knowing that if I do this, it's going to affect Uganda's competitiveness and so on, then we shall all lose out in that. So we need that economy-wide modeling that brings together all these issues. And the same goes for the OTT. I don't know who talked about OTT, the gentleman from UCC. It's because we work in silos and we don't know what are our actions, how our actions are going to impact the rest of the economy. But the truth is that OTT, whether we like it or not, is impacting on other sectors. Even increasing the fuel prices, because we want to correct the tax, it's also impacting on other sectors. So we need to have that kind of approach. The lady from WUMA talked about import replacement, and this one we really welcome it because it's one of the areas that we focused on our agro-industrialization paper. But we need to be very, very careful on where import replacement is going to help Uganda. In some areas it might not help us because we are not competitive enough. In all, what I can be able to say, that from all the discussion, it seems to me that we need more public investment to ensure that we can be able to grow our private sector. The private sector will not be able to grow without support from government. And whatever investments are going to be done, they must be meaningful to enable us to realize economic growth that is inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. In conclusion, I think we need to be forward-looking collaborations that could fundamentally improve ways of doing business in Uganda between government of Uganda and the private sector, within the sectors, within the clusters that we have listened to, and within the small, medium, and large enterprises. My last one, I don't want to sound political, and I put it last for a purpose. Whatever we do in Uganda depends on how we turn around the political economy question. And I end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Another round of applause. Is political economy different from politics? We shall discuss that as we find out. But the message is planning, planning, planning. And thank God we have those who are dedicated to planning. Join me, welcome Dr. Joseph Muvawala, Executive Director, National Planning Authority, to come and take this on. This is food for your thought. This is for you to put together. When we come back next year, we want to look at the results. Dr. Muvawala, over to you, sir. He is a katukiro of Busoga, so you don't just clap like that, Banang. Ono mutu mukulu nyo Banang. Hey. Otherwise, we can close the new bridge if you're joking. Hey. Tinecho? Yes.
The Constitution of the Republic of Uganda clearly states that Busoga ends at the western bank of the Nile. So the entire Nile is in Busoga. So I thank you very much.
You can even keep the power.
My duty is very simple. First, Sir has done most of the work. We are not here to respond to the issues you have raised. We are here to listen. And since it is planning, 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 any planner who thinks you know it all, you had better go and revise your books again. So we've listened, and we're going to take action. But what have we had? It should not be planning, 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 planning. For Uganda, you should reverse it. It should be implementation, implementation, implementation. This country has the best planners I have seen on the continent. And from what I have heard people presenting here, we have the best CEOs I've seen, because I've also worked in over 10 African countries. So I am sure we are excellent at planning and policy. What we have to reverse, let us take more time implementing than planning. So that is critical for us. That's what we hear. We hear that you think that the vision is very ambitious, but it's very abnormal not to dream. If you don't dream, then you are sick. Something is wrong with you. Simply let us implement. We hear critically the issue of data, big data. That is critical as we think of the planning processes. The issue of poverty persisting is interesting. So we now have arguments on how we balance infrastructure spending and social spending. These are interesting arguments that we must take care of. The issue of taxes, for me, is an issue of processes and principles. If you want financial inclusion, what tax regime should you have? And why should we bring on taxes on the system without consulting? So this is our proposal to the government that we work for. And I am a different person because I assess government performance. So the proposal we want to make is that we should start evaluating our taxes on a year-to-year basis. What is the cost and what is the benefit? Many times when we are dealing with tax, we deal with the benefit. Nobody ever talks about the cost. So when I'm reading a budget, I'll say, a yield of this mobile money tax is 500 billion. You never talk about the cost. So the issue is for us in the Ministry of Finance to go back to economic planning and check all these things. And when we are wrong, we should say we are wrong and be able to make these changes. We agree with you for most of the information we've received. For tourism, we know it. We must invest more. That is the argument. And from the planning authority's point of view, that's where government is not aligned to the plan. We have recommended we spend more in tourism. We are spending the least in tourism. So that is an area we are going to deal with. And lastly, colleagues, we are developing the strategic direction for this country for the next 10 years. Because we don't want to be doing planning. So your views are very important to us. The recommendations that come out of here are going to be used. That I promise. But there is a difference writing a good plan and implementing a good plan. This country has the best plan. You can take it, remove a cover, give it to a good implementing country, and they will develop. So as CEOs, the best advice we would receive from you is how do we better implement? And I want to confirm, while we have said that was a World Bank statement, it is true. However, we have also done the same studies, and the figures are talking well. We invest a lot. The benefit, the returns in the physical investment are far too low. And one of the issues, implementation. When you talk to government officials, they will tell you procurement. But who does procurement? The people. I thank you very much.
Another round of applause for Dr. Mbawala. Very honest professional. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back on track. One would wonder if we should continue the discussion, but as CEOs, definitely this information feeds into your plans and strategies, and there could be a few areas of alignment or corrections that you'd like to raise. We will use a few more minutes, the next 30 minutes, to open the floor for your issues, for those who may have questions to answer. And we also still have, we are not short of resources. I'll invite Dr. Robin Chibuka to take the chair. He's going to moderate the next session for your questions. He will be supported by very competent persons who are introduced. Let's clap for Dr. Chibuka. And don't forget, he chairs the board of the bank. So he's going to be joined by the other panelists. May I invite Ms. Rachel Sebude, a senior economist in the World Bank of Africa. Is Rachel here? That's what I have here. Yes? Okay. In the World Bank's Africa Macroeconomic Trade and Investment, Richard, you're still awake. Very good. Investment Unit. She has over 20 years experience in policy-oriented economic research, policy formulation, implementation. Of course, as a researcher, she has done quite a lot. She is a fellow of the Macroeconomic and Financial Management Institute of Eastern and Southern Africa, MEFMI, and has research affiliation with the Center for African Studies, Oxford University. and African Economic Research Consortium. She attained academic credentials from Makerere University, Kampala, Uganda, McGill University, Montreal, Canada. Our hands together for Rachel. The other panelist is Dr. Ngategize, currently the head of the private sector development unit of the Ministry of Finance. He has served as economic advisor to the Minister of Finance for several years. He holds a PhD and master's degree in agricultural economics from Michigan State University and has held various academic and policy management positions within and outside Uganda. He was central to the design of the US $70 million second private sector competitiveness project and the $100 million competitiveness enterprise development project, CEDP. He has served on several boards, including Centenary Bank and several others.
between innovation or academic, then government comes in to support those innovations, and then we need the private sector to pick the innovation, scale it up, commercialize, of course, in the right ecosystem, economic ecosystem, affordable financing, availability of infrastructure, the tax policies, so that we allow the domestic entrepreneurs to prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Basil. Next is Paul.
Thank you so much. My name is Paul Virevu Muinda. I'm a professor of open distance and e-learning at Makerere University and deputy principal, College of Education and External Studies. I am here to represent Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University. This forum is very important for us as academia in universities and people who provide education, because as you realize, all the sectors around human resource that is key for them, then we need to come together, sit and see how we can be able to produce a product that suits the market. I think that is my opening remark.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Next is Peter.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think Minister of Finance, if you were part of that, maybe we may be either short on execution or communication, but that exists. Tourism, since my friend Asimwe came to head the tourism board, I think the budget to tourism has. At times the joke is that at times he fails to finish the money and we return it. So the school in Jinja being built, the Piara found examples that he. Of course, there are issues like Arua incidents, which we can. Part of the issues that remains a gap. But the point, I think the banking sector is doing well on digitization. I can pick my money, spend it, and for me, I grow trees, pay my workers. I think I shouldn't be running around to register the company here, to run around to get renew my passport or my driver's license. There is scope we have to improve service delivery. Maybe in the interest of and with and on service delivery in the land registry, we are close completing 21 land offices. So these zonal land offices with computerized information systems should actually help to enhance this resource, which is critical in terms of our wealth, the dynamics around the land market. It should also help the bankers to be that One of my historical things when I'm also concerned, and remember I'm not a civil servant, finance, it was to modernize agriculture. So we wrote a plan to modernize agriculture. In that book, and within one chart, if I appoint this non-sectoral condition fund, so let it be, so that subsequently they can, in a dynamic way, address the challenges they have. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Next is
being equitable, about being mentioned. What we mean by being equitable, being inclusive. I think the question we should be asking for each of the cluster addressing, or we're
with you. I think what we needed to do is to look for those low-hanging fruits to make sure that we can execute, which finance, especially something that I'm involved in, the private development part. We have a strategy and we have representation across the board. Of course, you will never have everybody involved. Now, one of the things, the private sector working group, which the minister launched earlier this year, has four subgroups. One looks at strategy, the other looks at value chains and platforms related to those. I'm saying, at least from the government perspective, we are looking at that very closely. Now, what are some of the examples that I execute? If we fail to liberalize the pension system, has talking about is that you and me, especially the chief executives here, we can start talking about investment clubs. So if we come together and monthly out to the right windows, then we can get to help a seamway, stays and highway stopovers, and those products we need to have those long stays and what have you, but also get into sectors like the hotel, as you talk about execution, and I like this other point also, these monies in youth livelihoods. Okay, let's talk about them, but let's also show or communicate the fact that, oh, if government is distributing the youth, so there is districts across the country, and one of the messages I was giving them, because I'm involved and I know one of the people has and wine production, I can mention without favor, Ambassador Mugume, and we are basically saying we should get a cluster of these people, the Mukeiras, and other people that are already into the wine sector, and then engage government in terms of incentives to grow these kinds of things. So my message, Chair, is that let's engage government in a proactive way, and that's why we're interested in the Chief Executive Summit in terms of resolving these challenges that we have, execution being inclusive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think we all agree we've had a very excellent panel. And on behalf of CEO Forum, I'd like to express my appreciation to all of you panel members. And please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in a hand of applause for the panel. Thank you very much. I hand over to you, Mr. MC.
Welcome back to the floor. Another round of applause as you receive. And thank you very much for the wonderful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for the last presentation here, just 5 minutes to witness a testimony. What we have done as Ugandans, realization of availability of resources, and indeed, the delivery of a healthy population.
Good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't able to do that. First, I'd like to congratulate PK and his team of the CEO Forum to of the 9th business on the economy and I'd like to speak to you on something that is so dear to me, and this is the linkage between enterprise and the communities. For any business and for any organization, I believe our responsibilities should be to our shareholders, should be to our customers, should be our employees, but it's so important as well that we are so responsible to the communities in which we were born and live. And in this regard, I'd like to share with you something that I'm so passionate with. I served as governor of Rotary in Uganda and Tanzania 5 years ago. And during my travels as a district governor for Rotary, I saw something that was very shocking. And as governor, you visit so many projects that Rotary does. And Rotary, particularly the Rotary Foundation, funds projects in 6 areas of focus: in peace and conflict resolution, in basic education and literacy, in health, and general economic development. I'm shocked that you find so many deaths because of lack of blood. While visiting a hospital in Soroti, a young lady was brought, very heavily pregnant. The medical superintendent was taking her around. We look after her. The corporate world, we did mobilize ourselves. We went to the Rotary Foundation and we went to Mengo Hospital. Mengo Hospital, a piece of land where we could build a blood bank. This we did. The Rotary Foundation gave us $250,000 US. The company that I work for, City Chemical Industries, gave us a grant of $175,000. And then we moved across a number of businesses, and I'm sure many participated. We were able to raise $1.3 million and put up a blood bank in Mengo Hospital. But the effect of that partnership is so huge. Because our country requires about 350,000 units of blood every year. But unfortunately, we've been able to do only 250,000 units of blood. 100,000 units of blood. That's approximately 20-something% of people who need blood transfusion are alive. And this is a responsibility that we must all come along and participate as partners and close this gap. It's something that is noble. And it brings me to one famous Ugandan singer, Philip Bongle Lutaya. He sang, "Today is me, tomorrow is someone else." You could say, "If I need blood, I'll get it," but you never know where it takes us. It's an appeal that I give to you, my fellow chief executives and fellow colleagues, captains of business and enterprise, that let's go out and try to close this gap once and forever. We can do it. The blood bank at Mengo Hospital now works, but it's not enough. We need to scale it up. We need to create what is called component blood. Major forum for corporate leaders to come together as we celebrate work. Join us as Rotary, join the corporate entities that will participate in it. We intend also to utilize the relationship between jazz and leadership. We intend to invite one of the leading jazz singers. We did responsibility. It's my belief, and I believe it is your belief, that the best way to rediscover oneself is to bury ourselves in the service of others.
Just stretch your hand. Cattle, then at about organization. Made, and like to encourage us to continue with the discussion over lunch. But before we go for lunch, we'd like to thank our providers who have supported. And I'd like to encourage all of us to walk through these displays. Read these banners, they're very good messages. They are very good messages to carry away and also to open us up as we plan our own slogans, mission, vision, and strategic goals. We'd like to thank Legacy, the Legacy team, who have been supporting us technically, both on the sound and also on the photography. We'd like to thank Megan, ushers and decorators. I have a contact here from Fiona Ndagire, the operations director. She's been heading the team. Would like to thank Serena for the good hospitality, and hereafter I will be inviting Mr. Anthony Chege to come. Was I'd like to thank all of you. I'd like to introduce you who are likely to get close during lunch. You're asking where to send your messages, but there is an interesting forum, the Nile Consultancy Initiative. That's a think tank and a consultancy team for His Excellency the President. Stephen Kawoyo, would you be kind to stand up? Because of time, we have not been able to hear his voice, but please get close to him. Actually, those who want to send a message, and Mr. Henry Rugamba, you might be able to engage a lot more than maybe a 2-3 minute address. The final announcement, the CAP Alumni Forum will take place in this very hall after lunch. So members of the CAP Alumni Forum, please come back here after lunch for your discussion. I'd like to thank you very much for your attendance. You heard your names, please interact. Let's go away better friends. And for sure, there are not many I may see before the end of the year. Allow me to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Solomon Rugondo, your conference chair, thank you very much indeed. And whatever has not satisfied you, I plead guilty and ask for your indulgence. Mr. Anthony Chege, would you kindly come and greet the forum and invite us to lunch? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Solomon. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a great pleasure to have you gather at the Serena, not for the first time, but for the 9th time to discuss important agendas for this country. We are truly honored to have been part of the CEO Forum. Today, my friend Stephen spoke about a golf course that we opened about 2